Matthew Prince is the co-founder and CEO of cybersecurity company Cloudflare, joins us now. Matthew, really want your insight here. This is a scenario that's been floating around in cybersecurity circles for a long time, the idea that major U.S. infrastructure could be at risk from a cyber attack. Now it's happened. How serious is this, not just as an individual incident, but as a precedent setter for what could happen in the future?
You know, I think it's actually a real concern right now that we're seeing across the board more and more critical infrastructure being targeted by these sorts of attackers. I think what's going on anecdotally is that attackers think that their time may be coming to an end with around the world governments thinking of cracking down more and more on these cybersecurity incidents. And so they seem to be unleashing everything. And so in the last 6 months, we've seen a dramatic uptick in attacks against our customers. I'm fortunate now to be on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, which is one of Cloudflare's customers and obviously a critical piece of infrastructure. And we are doing everything we can. We're working around the clock to make sure that our customers stay safe from what is an unparalleled amount of cyber activity going on in the world right now.
But Matthew, isn't this part of the geopolitical playbook at this point? I mean, I think back to Stuxnet just a little bit more than 10 years ago, which was in quite a sense an attack on infrastructure, granted for arguably military geopolitical reasons. But still, I mean, isn't this a playbook that's going to be copied? And does it perhaps put more pressure on the government to take responsibility for protecting even private industry within the country?
I think it does. And I think that this is, unfortunately, one of those types of attacks that even small nations with not a lot of resources like North Korea can cause enormous amounts of harm. And so it is very appealing for those types of countries. What I am encouraged by is that when we have seen action between, for example, the Obama administration and the China administration in previous efforts to control cyber attacks, we did see marked decreases in the amount of attacks for a period of time after that. Those bets are off right now, and it does seem like around the world more and more governments are turning to this as a way of attacking governments that might be stronger than them. And whether they do it directly or just patriotic citizens are doing it on their behalf, it is going to involve both government action, but then also action by companies like Cloudflare to make sure that the internet and our technology systems that we rely on more and more stay secure.
Matthew, you said you were encouraged by progress being made by the Obama administration, but then all bets are off now. What happened?
Well, I think that we have had, again, not as much focus on the cybersecurity space. But again, I'm encouraged that currently the Biden administration appears to be circulating a draft on cybersecurity rules that are pushing for very sensible ways that industry can make sure that they are on top of this. If you're selling to the federal government, for example, making sure that you're using a zero trust solution, the sorts of solutions that we at Cloudflare build and other leading cybersecurity companies build. And I do think that we are encouraged that we can stay in front of these types of attacks and protect critical infrastructure.
Okay, so you talked about sort of the government side. What about corporate America? How prepared is it or not for increasing number and scope of these cyber attacks?
You know, I think that there really is sort of a tale of two worlds in corporate America right now. There are the digital-first companies that have gone through their digital transformation, that have adopted approaches that are like a zero-trust approach and that are in a better position. There are, on the other hand, a number of companies that haven't gone through that yet. I think the encouraging thing is that the pandemic, one of the silver linings has been that people have understood that it can't continue to rely on the way that they did business before, and they have to upgrade their systems to be more secure. The analogy that I like to use is it's a bit like a boat. The old version of cybersecurity was that you made the hull of the boat as strong as possible, but you didn't have any bulkheads internally. And the challenge is no matter how thick you make that plating of the side of the boat, there's always going to be a loose rivet somewhere or a potential seam. What the new approach to security is doing, and what, again, the Biden administration appears to be asking and in turn ordering those companies that are going to be doing business with the federal government to do, is actually build those bulkheads. Make sure that if there is a leak in one part, it doesn't sink the entire boat. And that zero trust approach to a security that Cloudflare is pioneering, I think is really a better approach and something that more and more sophisticated companies are turning to today.